Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Create and Vent podcast. I'm, as always, joined here with my lovely assistant to the regional co-host, JeremySCook.com. And today we have a lovely guest here. It is Stephen Hawes from Opulo.io. He builds these lovely pick-and-place machines that I have one of over here.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to him about all kinds of cool stuff. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I am fantastic. Thank you guys for having me back.
What is a pick-and-place machine? First of all, Pat, can you tell the audience that?
I'd like to tell you what a pick-and-place machine is. Sometimes, like Jeremy, you are a pick-and-place machine. You're a slow and methodical one. You take the little tweezers and you pick up electronics components and you place them onto a PCB. What Stephen has is he has an open source robot with a camera on it that picks up the resistors and the capacitors and puts them in the correct place for you. Kind of like everybody knows what a 3D printer is now. It's kind of like a 3D printer except with
thingies. Electronic
with air,
thingies.
With pneumatics.
Air grabber.
Yeah. Instead of it's a pneumatic tweezers is kind of like the joking thing I'll call it. Is like we actually
I like that a lot.
When we had to rename, we were looking at a bunch of fun names for like what should we call the machine, and someone suggested pinzette, which is tweezers in French or something, and that has stuck with me. I think that is such a cool name, you know?
That does sound great. And I mean, you know, France is a big country. There's probably plenty of people who need a pick and place
sure.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Although maybe they'd be like, tweezers? I don't want to use tweezers. I want a pick and place machine, and then they don't look at it anymore.
Then they go somewhere else.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, if you want to hear more about that, we went over that quite a bit in episode 56 when we had Stephen on before, and he was nice. He's been nice enough to join us again. He could, one of our guests had decided to endure our hard-hitting brand of journalism that we have here at the Create and Vent podcast. Since then, I think it was, when did we interview Stephen? Was it about a year ago? Maybe a little more?
Wow, yeah, it's been a minute, huh? Yeah, it's probably been a little over a year.
What's our new episode number, Jeremy?
This is like something? 73, maybe, roughly, 73-ish.
And his was 56, and it's about 56. One a month. So it's been almost 2 years. Can you believe that?
Wait, had we not even shipped a machine yet? Is that really
true? You were starting to ship. You just ran out of early bird specials, and you told me, you said, Pat, if you want to order one, I'll sneak you in an early bird.
Wow!
deal.
So I talked with you guys right after we started shipping the kit. That feels like a decade ago to me. That's so weird. That's the weirdest context. Wow.
That's great. So what has happened between? How is your business? We just want to know how your business has hopefully exploded since then. What would you say you do here?
So wow, that is just crazy. So yeah, when we first talked, it was we pretty much had no idea. We knew that I had a YouTube channel with people that followed it, and we knew that some people told us they wanted to buy a machine. And then when I talked with you guys, a bunch had on launch day, and that was kind of all we knew. And it greatly exceeded our expectations of what we sold that first day. But we're like, is this just like a flash in the pan? Did we immediately saturate the market because everyone that wanted a desktop pick and place machine already followed me on YouTube, and they bought one if they wanted one, and that's the end of it. And so that was huge. That was a spooky feeling for us. So when we talked last, that's kind of where I was mentally about it. And so one of the first things we did is after we got the kits out, I interviewed a ton of customers. Like, you've done this thing, you put it through, you're definitely an early adopter market. What's the worst part about this? And then everything that they told us distilled down into 3 main problems, and that has been the only focus of the company since we last talked.
Can I guess one of the problems?
You could. I would love to.
I just
hear
want
what
to
you
get,
think
because I was envious of the second machine as soon as I saw the spec sheet.
Yeah.
Because my friend Brian did the work 3D printing all the parts for this.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to be involved.
Sure.
And that took, I don't know how long that took, but that took a while. I was so excited when I saw that this was called the version 2, I think, though.
That's the V2.
And the version V2. I have the V2, and that confuses me because this is the first one you shipped. So
you're telling me.
I'm a simple
and
person.
Then the motherboard on that thing is the Rev 3 motherboard, and the V3 machine has a Rev 4 motherboard. Oh, dude, I would go back and change a lot of naming things. But yeah, so what was the biggest problem that you had? What was your biggest frustration?
You flat pack the machine. There's a side rail, the side piece in the middle, and the gantry ship assembled now?
Yes.
Do I understand that right?
Totally.
Fantastic. That's worth every extra penny.
So that, what you just said, was the first thing that we heard, is people didn't want to burn a ton of time assembling a pick and place machine. Like if you're buying a pick and place, you want a tool and not a project. You want it to just build your stuff. And if you have to burn 2 weekends putting this whole thing together, like you are an early adopter, you probably are into it a little bit because it's like a fun thing to hack on. But also you kind of want it for boards. Like that's the reason you buy a pick and place. So that was our number one thing. And immediately when we got that feedback, we're like, cool, it has to come almost fully assembled. And that was the first thing we did. And that was V3. And that was only a few months later. Like we started selling them in mid-February. And then that July, we launched V3, which is the semi-assembled version of it. Because that was the number one thing people said. Yeah.
So what
not surprised to hear you say that.
You had two other things you were going to tell us.
Exactly. So then the second one, and Pat, I'm expecting you to go, is strip feeders. Loading strip feeders on a machine is not the most fun thing. And there's some memes in our Discord server of like you're peeling the film back and all the parts go pling. And if you need a place to put your parts and there's not that many of them, especially if they're wide tape, they're fine. They work great. You don't have to reload them that often, but having to manually pull tape through so that the machine can pick those parts, and then when it runs out of parts in that strip, you have to reload it. That's a huge detriment to automation.
Well, now, just for whatever, everybody's clarity, when do you say that? Can you break that down for somebody that maybe, electronics enthusiast, but not necessarily knows what you're talking?
The pick and place, yeah. So the nozzle on the Lumen has to pick up a bunch of parts to put them on your board, and those parts have to
the
come
nozzle
from
is basically like a pneumatic tweezers, right? That's coming down, actually picking it up. Okay, great.
You guys say pneumatic, and that's a fancy word. It's a little vacuum.
Yes. There's a tiny little vacuum pump. It's a little motor with a really cool geometry inside of it that pulls a light vacuum. It's actually pretty strong. You can pick an entire Arduino Uno with the Lumen. A full Arduino, you can just pick it up. It's kind of cool. But that little pump pulls a vacuum through a nozzle, which is just kind of like a tiny little opening. It's like a little needle kind of. And it goes on top of a part, turns on the pump, picks it up, and it's holding the part just like kind of stuck onto the tip. And then it uses a camera to do all of its calibration and alignment, and then it places it onto your board. That's all well and good. And if you pull, you need some way to serve these parts up to the nozzle to be picked, visioned, and then placed again.
Right.
So the easiest way to do that is you just have a little 3D printed shape that lets you pull this tape through. All these components come on like a tape of certain standard widths. The document defining these standards is fascinating. It's so cool. I've looked at it quite a bit. And this shape just holds this tape in place. And you pretty much tell the machine, hey, you can just pick here, then move up 4 millimeters, pick again, move up 4 millimeters, and that's how you kind of go through and pick all the parts. And that's fine. That's what everyone that had a V2 used. And that's what we used to build the first 400 machines that we sold. But you have to reload the tape after a while. It's not as automated as it could be. So the second thing people told us was we don't want to have to reload strips. We want what's called a powered feeder. So this is something that takes the tape in and automatically moves the tape forward very precise amounts so the nozzle can continually pick from a reel of like 5,000 components. So you load it up once, set it off, and it will pick 5,000 parts or however many are in your reel. Typically passives are 5,000. You can get like 10,000 ones if you get small parts. And you don't have to touch it for thousands and thousands of parts instead of like 30. So that was the second thing. Huge, huge, huge.
It's amazing to me as somebody who worked in industrial automation for a decade or so that just this even works. It's mind blowing to me that the precision and everything that's involved. Yeah, good for you and good for everybody else that's building these machines because
I have a lot of help. But yeah, sometimes I'll watch the machine run, especially nowadays, and I'll get to some of the other updates that we've done recently, but I'll watch it run and it's just I'll just grin at it and watch it go because it's fast, it's automated. Like the amount of movement, the amount of like change to what it means to run it since we last talked is a lot. Like it's just so much easier to use. It's great. So
nice.
So that was the second thing.
But while you're on the second thing, because it's related, I don't want to say how reliable is the machine. That's the wrong question. But, you know, like we started out, we got our first set of boards, little guys with 10 little boards, because we figured that was a good balance between how much do we think the machine will successfully deposit, like from zero without knowing anything. We could probably get it to deposit this many, but deposit's probably the wrong word too.
Place?
Place, thank you. We could get it to place this many components, but like, would I be able to scale like today, would I confidently be able to scale that up and get a big giant board that fills up the empty space on there and let it run for 8 hours? Is that a...
Yes, is the short answer. It's not...
I believe you.
It won't take 8 hours because there's very few jobs that it's not just fast that it will finish in. Like, I would struggle to get it to run a job for an hour, I think. Because you guys actually asked me last time, and I was wholeheartedly unprepared for the big hard-hitting question. I was going back and rewatching the last episode in preparation for coming on again, and oh man, I didn't have my numbers. Shame on me. But this time I do. Like the CPH that we had, which is chips per hour, which is like the universal metric of like measuring a pick and place machine. And
last time we did it by minute, I think. So we did it all wrong.
Did we? I thought we had CPH.
I don't know for sure, but that's my memory. Okay. But that doesn't mean I'm right. Don't trust my memory.
We forgive everybody. Everybody's forgiven us.
Yes. Yeah. But then I think we were at like 500 CPH. So you could place 500 parts in an hour, which is fine. It's not incredible, but it's okay. But that wasn't really the point of the first version. The first, like, any amount of chips per hour automated is way better than tweezers. So we were just trying to get like to something first. And now I actually just ran a test yesterday to get a new metric. I've managed to hit 1290, so almost 1300. So over double. Almost, they're getting, 2.5
Jeremy's doing the math. He's looking up and doing one of these.
It's like, I'm just thinking that's what's a part every 3 seconds, roughly, which is
a little less than 3 seconds. And that makes a couple assumptions. And the way that pick and place, I don't like the way a lot of pick and place companies say their CPH because they just say, it can do this. But what they mean is there's a tiny little strip feeder, and then the board's right here, right next to it, and they don't have vision on. So they go, and it's like they have a crazy high number. But it doesn't. That's not a realistic board. So I've been going through and trying to like actually give useful numbers of like if you have vision off and it's a reasonable placement distance, this is your CPH. If you have vision on, it's like 800, 900 CPH with vision on, which is most of the time what you're going to get. So like I'm trying to give useful numbers. There's even actually a spec of like how do you accurately, consistently measure CPH with like a standard, which I'm looking into trying to get happening. But so I have my numbers on it this time. I come with my data.
Well, it's funny because our last guest, Pocket 83, he said he talked about marketing and bad math and everything. So I feel like, you're on it with that. And also you're from you live in Pennsylvania too. So you guys aren't. Yeah. It's I don't know, little callback.
Yeah, Pocket's up there too as well. Not just me. Cool. I'm also from, but everybody is apparently.
Everybody is except for me,
Jeremy,
Florida.
I'll take it.
Well, you're kind of from the opposite. You're from Connecticut. Now you've come down to the middle. Yep. I guess it's still the north.
It's kind of northeast. Like some people say it's Midwest, but it's not really. Some people say it's East Coast. It's kind of not really. It's like it's kind of in between. It feels more Midwest than East Coast to me, but like I grew up in Cowtown, Connecticut, so I was very much East Coast. Like I could drive 40 minutes and get to the water. So, Pennsylvania feels like the Midwest. Yeah, or I should say Pittsburgh does. But, I love it. It's great to be in a city where there's like stuff going on and it's such a good sized city. It's so affordable. There's so many good reasons to start a hardware company here because it's got CMU and
Pittsburgh specifically, right?
Pittsburgh. Yep. Yeah, we're in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's on the far west side of Pennsylvania, almost Ohio. We can drive 30 minutes and get into Ohio.
Nice.
It's great. It's fantastic. Okay. But yeah. Well, so I went on a huge tangent there. I'm sorry.
About, that's what our podcast's all about.
We should probably touch on problem number 3.
Yeah.
Well, but we solved number 2, and that was the bit I hadn't gotten to, which was we shipped powered feeders. So we made this little. I really should have brought one to show you, but it's this little robot. You can I can hide it behind my palm. It's not huge. and it bolts onto the machine, or it kind of automatically, you don't need tools to mount it, and it loads in a spool, and it will feed up parts consistently. It talks back to the machine, full communication. And we did 8mm feeders which supports tape that's 8mm wide. There's like standard widths. There's 8, 12, 16, 24, 32, 44, and then some really weird ones. So we did 8, and we shipped 8 in April, and they've been out since then, and working great. Like, they make the machine so much faster. And then actually just 4 or 5 days ago, we put 12mm variant on our website. So now you can also get the 12mm width, which is 90% of the parts anyone will use in their job comes in 8 or 12. And sometimes you have a 16 and 24 of like weird parts. But for the most part, everything's kind of in 8 and 12. So those were our big priorities.
I was excited, Stephen, to watch your video about the $1.34 manual automatic.
Yeah.
Feeders.
Wow, you remembered the price
idea.
of it. I'm impressed you remembered that exact number.
Well, I went and looked and I wrote it down. It's in our notes. I wasn't going to remember.
You could have really wowed me there. You didn't have to tell me that.
Well, I don't want you to think that I already told you I have a terrible memory. We've established that 3 minutes ago.
Sure.
But I thought that was neat because if you ever needed if I decided I needed to put one more component on it, I don't have the stuff here. I could just 3D print a $1.34 thing, even if it's slower than the full automatic.
Right. It's slower, and it puts a lot of undue stress, like lateral force on the head, which isn't great. And they're also kind of inconsistent. I think it's possible to design them to make them more consistent, but if you're really on a budget, I mean, you can also build a feeder yourself. You don't have to buy them from us. The source is all open, like everything we do. So if you want a powered feeder, we also sell the really hard to source stuff on our site. So if you just want to like make your own and save a buck, we help you out doing that. So you can build them if you want, but like it's a thing to build them, but you can if you want to. But yeah, even the $1.34, it's pretty cheap to just print some crap out and slap it on the machine. And if it works, it works.
When I saw that, I thought it would be neat. Like if you had one weird big component, like an ESP32 or something that you were picking, put that in a manual and put the 3,000 capacitors that you need to place on the good ones feeders. Or something.
So it's similar. It's similar to the one that you would buy, but it's cheap, and it's both cheap in name and in price. Both.
What it does
Jeremy,
is instead of
the mechanics, the motor is the nozzle goes into the tape and pushes.
Oh,
the nozzle
that's pretty clever.
The mechanical.
I can see why you wouldn't want to do that all the time, but that is clever. That is
it's just it will kind of like use the nozzle tip to go into. There's little holes in the side of the tape that it's meant for a sprocket to kind of like move the tape forward. That's how we do it in the powered feeders. But if you just drop it into the tape, pull it forward, then you can pick the part. The problem is the film is like a thin sheet of plastic that's adhered on top of the tape that holds the parts in, but you have to peel that off all passively just from pulling the tape forward with the nozzle tip, and getting that to work was really fun. It was tricky, but they're not the most consistent thing in the world, and that's why we were like, we still have to do the powered feeder thing. Like, this is not...
It doesn't matter if they're any good. It was fun watching you make them.
For entertainment purposes, it was great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, what is number 3 though? I think I'm curious about this before we.
Number 3 is software setup. So we use OpenPNP, which is a piece of awesome open source software that controls the actual machine. It's the thing that does the machine vision. It's the thing that does the actually like generating the G code to send to the Marlin host on the Lumen, telling it how to move, doing all that kind of stuff. Turning on pumps and valves. All those decisions are made in OpenPNP. And getting OpenPNP set up is hard. And we've done a lot of things to try and standardize that. Like the devs for OpenPNP release all kinds of cool new features and stuff, but they're always kind of making changes, and we need to have something very consistent for people that are like always, we can't change docs every time they make an improvement. So we kind of standardized on a certain version that we know works and is consistent, doesn't have bugs. And we're trying to like get the docs to be better, and we're also trying to like look into ways of like making the software easier to use and more intuitive. So that's the one we're currently working on, is trying to find a way to make like software setup, running the job, keeping track of things easier.
So generally, better software is number 3, and something that you're improving on at this point. Is that?
Exactly.
correct?
And like OpenPNP works. It works great. Like you can control Lumen with it, no problem. It's just you have to learn a lot of stuff to get it going. And there's some things I think like to the UI that we can do to make it easier to get going with it. And we're exploring what can we do to try and make it so, because that's right now that's our number one, the problem that people have is using the software to run the machine. Like machines. Great. It works super well. It's like figuring out what setting, what checkbox, like there's a lot of those little things because OpenPNP was built for people that make their own pick and place machine. And now suddenly it's standardized for this one thing that we're trying to put it towards. So this Swiss Army knife that can do all kinds of stuff, we kind of only ever really need to use like 3 of the tools in the Swiss Army knife. So how do we keep people from being like, well, what are these other 70 tools in here? Well, you don't have to use them with this machine. Our docs, we spend a lot of time on our docs. Use these.
Right. Yeah.
tabs.
What do you need the curly pointed thing for? I think that's
right.
for
Yeah.
opening line, but nobody
exactly.
uses
Yeah. So I mean, it's a great piece of software. It works. It's just it takes a lot to learn, and I think there's some stuff that we can do to make it easier for people to get set up with a job, import all their stuff, get their feeders set up, all that kind of stuff. So we're just kind of trying to figure out how we can do that, and right now we're doing that with making our docs a lot better.
Nice. Well, how many machines have you sold at this point? I mean, I know you had the Kickstarter. That was a couple hundred, couple thousand. I don't.
That's a hard-hitting question.
Oh,
yeah. I don't have a number off the top of my head. We actually never did a Kickstarter. We had our launch day, which was it was all just us because we didn't want to give Kickstarter the cut. And I did a Kickstarter in 2019, and they didn't really give. It was a great platform. They were super helpful, but it didn't give me a lot more eyes and sales for the cut. It didn't make sense to do it here. And I had a YouTube channel with 45,000 people that I could push it towards. So, but we sold out. We had
45,000 is a lot when you're talking about a pick and place audience.
Yeah,
that's
an early adopter market.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we sold out 100 in an hour on that day. So for context on that was kind of like the first wave. I don't really have a number for it. Many hundreds of machines. I don't
many
know
hundreds
exactly.
Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
We'll accept that.
Yeah. I don't really know exactly. It's less than 10,000. I'll ask Lucian. It's a lot.
You market yourself for the various means. I wanted to ask, have you seen the show Severance by any chance?
No, but it's funny you say that. Like literally yesterday I was looking into watching it because someone recommended it to me.
Okay. I just wondered how your product placement was going in that from that.
Why?
I had to look this up, Jeremy. The system that they use in Severance is called Lumen. Lumon.
It's not.
Oh, this is the Mind Wipe show, right?
It's the Mind Wipe show, right? Okay, and it has nothing to do with your PNP. But when I saw that, I just thought of you, and I thought this is so hilarious. If they had somehow like given them like a product placement and just went horribly, but
that would have been wild. The Lumen places your parts and wipes your brain.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Jeremy laughed too hard, and now his video cut out.
He did.
Jeremy, are you there?
That's the second time that's happened. But last time it wasn't Jeremy.
Last time. Not able to share their video and audio. Oh, no, Jeremy.
Oh,
Oops,
no.
we weren't able
what
to get
should
audio
I do? It's
one.
asking me.
This might be an internet issue on your side. Close all tabs, refresh the page, and rejoin the
Jeremy's
studio.
browser is not supported. How did that happen?
Suddenly?
Just in
Riverside
the middle of
pushes an update. All active recordings with an old version of Chrome don't work. Unreal.
I told a story a few episodes ago to a gentleman about my brother-in-law when he was installing his washing machine.
Yeah.
Clothes washing machine in his new home, brand new built home. And he didn't put the hoses on right. And it flew off and it started leaking. It started spraying. What do you do when the hose starts spraying, Steven?
Turn off the water?
You do. That's not what he did. He took the hose and put it in his mouth.
That is the worst possible way
it's
to handle
the worst
that
possible
problem.
thing you could do.
Do you think he could swallow it fast enough?
I don't know what he thought. He probably saw enough cartoons and said, this is the right thing to do.
There's an inherent upper limit on how long that can last. Like, you're eventually going to fill up with water. Like, you can't do that forever. Oh, man.
But I hate to tell the same story twice, but it made our guest laugh, and he went backwards, and this video went dark.
And the video cut out.
the same thing happened.
Really? That's amazing. The thing that's interesting, too, is because I went dark, the thing went out, but then I can hear you and Steven talking about me. I mean, you didn't say anything too nasty about me. In fact, not anything particularly bad anyway. No, I don't think you did. I'm kind of making that up. But it is kind of funny that I talk about some weird some stuff on that show Severance, and then it just
and they wiped you out.
They wiped me out. Yeah, that's the conspiracy with
it
whatever.
Was product placement. They just made you forget the fact that it happened.
Yeah,
but no, I mean seriously though, you talk about marketing. Obviously, you had a YouTube channel that was fantastic for this. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing you've been doing, I guess you could call it marketing. You could say you have a podcast now, so that's awesome. Welcome to the club. I suppose.
Thanks. Yeah, it's we.
How do you feel about it? Is my main question.
So the reason we even did it is because I am probably very annoying to everyone else here at the company about being on mission. Like, everything we do here has to be. Every decision needs to be about, is it helping people manufacture their products? I have this printed out and put up in every room. How are we helping people manufacture their products? That is the reason this company exists. It's why we're open source. It's why we sell individual parts. It's why we sell the machine. And another thing that so far we've only been doing that by shipping a robot. That's the only way that we've done it so far. But there's a lot of stuff that Lucian and I have learned in the past couple of years of running this thing that would be helpful. I would have killed to know a lot of these things a couple years ago when we were really starting out. So the podcast is really a way to help people figure out how to structure a business and organize something around the idea of mid-scale manufacturing, starting to ship a hardware product using the Lumen. Like, do this thing where you're making your product in a nice linear scaling fashion without having to spend, tens of thousands of dollars on a contract manufacturer. How do you do that? So the podcast is also trying to help on that mission. And Lucian and I have these conversations anyway. And if they could be helpful to somebody, why wouldn't we just sit down for 90 minutes every couple weeks and record one of them,
Yeah.
So that's why we chose to do it. It's fun as heck. I love doing it. It's such a blast.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, well, I listened to your, was it the one with
Chris from CNC Labs?
CNC Labs.
How did you know that? How did you know? Because that's the one I listened to this week,
because he's the only guest we've had, and you said the one with, so I just figured it was that.
Anyway, I thought you did a great job, and I thought
thanks.
I thought University of Waterloo sounds pretty awesome too. I think they had a nice plug for them. Wow.
Unreal. Actually, a lot of when Lucian and I worked at Formlabs, the resin 3D printing company, we hired so many interns out of Waterloo, and they were like, it's such a great school. It's such a cool school. So many intelligent kids coming out of that program. And Chris is also a great example of that, Chris and Andy. But yeah, awesome place. So yeah, it was cool to hear how much they really do to help students try and launch a thing that has kept them busy for the better part of a decade. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. I guess I didn't realize they'd been around that long, but I guess,
Well, is that true?
Guess
Maybe I'm exaggerating.
I mean, 2003 was only 10 years ago, right? So I guess that.
I got some news for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of a decade.
Yeah.
I think he graduated college around the same time I did. I graduated college in 2017. So if they started in 2014, we're like 7 years for them. So yeah, better part of a decade, I guess. I think that's I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
But
and now your podcast is open hardware. I'm trying to think what it.
Open hardware manufacturing. The joke is OHM, like OHM, like resistance.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, open hardware manufacturing podcast, the OHM podcast.
Okay. And you guys talk anything having to do with manufacturing, etc. Just basically what you're doing, and I think that's, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think some of it is like we definitely talk about being open source too. So if you're just shipping a hardware product but you don't really care about being open source, a subset of them will apply to you, and maybe also you'll glean some stuff from the fact that we're open and the community engagement kind of side of things, and what we do to be aware of our community and like support them in the way that we choose to. But a lot of it is also like the one it's coming out tomorrow. I'm actually listening to the rough cut. I was listening to it right before we hopped on. It's about sourcing and like, how do you contact a vendor, get samples, buy a bunch of them? How does the money work? How does the shipping work? What is DDP versus DAP? Water, like sea ship, air ship. What are all the pluses and minuses of that? So that's the whole episode. That applies to anyone trying to build their own thing themselves, and you need to source parts.
Yeah.
So,
I was good. One request or whatever. One thing I would be so interested
Jeremy
in
wants you to do an episode on something.
I will. No, seriously. In our
saying.
Discord, if someone says, "Hey, we want this episode," we have a list in our company Notion, and we just put them on there. And when Lucian and I are like, "What do we talk about?" We look at the community requests and we pick one of them. Like, that's literally how we do it. So if you want us to
get
do
out
one,
of here, Jeremy, and go
put
to
it in.
Discord and put
no,
it in.
I'll type it in right now. Tell me what you want to hear. We'll put it on the list.
What I would like to know about is number one, when do you have to do RF testing? And maybe you've talked about this. I don't know. It just seems like something that I don't know. And then number two, what do you how do you handle import duties, and why you're importing all this stuff and you're not necessarily being taxed on it, and then it's like, how do you resolve
handle
this?
that?
Yeah. So maybe you go over that in your podcast.
And Jeremy, when he wrote this down, he doesn't just want to know when to do RF testing. He wants to know how.
Right.
Well,
I believe was in there.
Maybe that's what I said. I don't know. I think that might be a big ask.
Well, no, that's a totally valid question, and that's that. If I had a nickel for every time someone asked me to talk about RF testing, like EMC testing, I'd have a lot of nickels. So like it's on the list, and we are in the process of being able to communicate that.
Okay.
So that one's coming up. The other one about duties and stuff, it's literally the episode's coming out tomorrow as of this recording. So we're talking about all the duties.
So people should subscribe right now, so they'll know when
Yeah.
it comes out.
If they'd like to, sure, yeah, we'd love to have them. But yeah, we talk about like, how do you, because Lucian really likes to go super in the weeds. He's like the best kind of nervous of, are we doing our due diligence? It's great.
Yeah.
It's like such a wonderful operations lead characteristic, because he's just so aware of like, are we doing our due diligence? Are we compliant? Are we blah, 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 blah. He's so on top of it. It's awesome. So when we first started
you must be like
stuff,
me, Steven, where you just rather ask for forgiveness when something goes wrong and just hope it works out.
So it depends on what we're
fine.
talking about, because sometimes I'm way more conservative of like, we need to cover our butt on this thing, and Lucian's not, and then other times it's the total opposite, and that way we balance each other out so well. Like it works really great. But oh yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just saying, I guess we haven't even said, Lucian is your business partner, correct? Or he's
Yes. Okay. He came on
Yeah.
after we raised a little money, or I started the company and raised money from an investor through a safe note, which pretty much means he's a great guy, Joel Spolsky. He started Stack Overflow.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he's such a cool dude. He's awesome. So we had him come on with an angel round, and it's a safe note. It's like a really cool way of raising money early on, where if we ever do a full institutional round where we have a proper valuation, whatever the money he put in at that valuation, he gets that percentage up to a certain cap. And like, there's all these rules about it. You'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. But so we had him come on, and then Lucian wasn't vibing with his current gig. He saw that I had raised some money. He's like, and we've been buds for a decade. So he's like, maybe I'm just going to move out to Pittsburgh and see what this whole thing's about. And then, it's been going ever since. So yeah, he came on very early on.
When we first talked in episode 56, you told us that Lucian was your first employee.
Yes,
and we thought he might be fake.
No, he's very
right.
real.
Real. Yeah.
But also, first employee implies he was being paid, which he was not for a while. Neither him or I was for a good long time.
Well, that's the best kind of employee. If you don't
Yeah, it works. And someone that I can be like, how are we going to do X, Y, Z? And he's like, I don't know. Like, having a friend in it is such an important part of it. I always kind of poo-pooed the idea of, in college I did a lot of like startup incubator stuff, and they were always like, you need a co-founder, and I'm like, no, I don't. I can do it all, and I can do a lot of the technical and marketing and stuff, but to have someone next to you figuring this stuff out and bouncing ideas off of is invaluable. It is like the absolute most critical thing about it. I think that's the best value of having someone that you do it with, you know, having a true partner in what you're trying to accomplish. It's so important, more than I ever thought it would be. So yeah, it's great to have.
Jeremy tried to have a podcast by himself for 3 months between me and the previous co-host.
I did. No, that's true because Max Maker, our first co-host, actually the guy who came up with the idea for this podcast, he decided he basically didn't have time for it anymore. And as you know, it does take time. And I was like, you know what? I'll try to do this on my own. And I just found that it just wasn't any fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like,
not that I had a couple good guests, and they were fine, but it was just like, I don't know. It's hard doing stuff by yourself, you know?
Yeah, it can be. And there isn't as much social pressure. Like if you have a bud who's like, hey, we're recording this day, right? And you were kind of on the fence about doing it anyway. It's like, oh yeah, I guess there's kind of this social obligation that this other person's expecting we're going to do this. And it puts the pressure on to actually make it happen. And, you know, it can be useful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who's like I like working for myself. I love working for myself. But every once in a while, it's like it'd be kind of nice to have somebody that says, "No, Jeremy, don't go bounce around on the other project that you think is kind of cool today. Go ahead and finish the other one that you've gotten 80% done." And you know, I have to be that guy for myself and the guy. You know,
it's hard.
So
like I will get to a point where if I come into work, and this sounds really sad, but it really isn't. But if I come into work and I'm like, oh man, I really want to work on XYZ, I have to stop myself and be like, is that actually the most important thing? Like, am I just trying to fit this in because it sounds fun? Like every job I've ever had before, someone has told me, Steven, do this. And I'm like, okay. And then I do that thing. And they're deciding if that's important. I'm the one who has to make that decision now. I'm constantly going, is this the most important thing? Every day I make 40 decisions of, is this the most important thing for you to be working on? Is this the most important thing for me to be working on, for us to be working on in a month? Like, that is draining. And learning how to do that was one of the hardest parts of working for myself, is having to learn to constantly prioritize for the trajectory of where we want to be. It's so much.
Well, and Steven, you're not just working for yourself. You have employees now, plural now. How do you feel about managing people? How's that?
I love it. It scared the heck out of me to start, because for a lot of reasons. I mean, the first and most significant one is I am now someone's income. And if I fail to do my job, someone has to get they have rent to pay. They have to buy groceries. Like it was one of the most serious responsibilities to take on, is hiring somebody of like, we're affecting this person's life. Like, it has to be such a serious decision to do this. It cannot be made lightly. So that was one of the earliest stresses. And the managing thing is, you know, we hire great people, intelligent, creative, wonderful people that we love working with. So the management stuff is easy. We're all just a team working together trying to build this thing and ship more machines. But the responsibility of like, yeah, I have to be able to write the payroll check every couple of weeks and know that that's going to come in consistently, and I'm supporting these people. That is probably the biggest stressor and anxiety of doing it. And like, it's never really a problem. It's never actually ever a problem. Like, we can always do it, but it's still a stressor. Like, I'm still responsible.
What if it is a problem next week? What if something goes horribly?
Exactly.
There's always a what if.
There's always a what if. What if, you know, there's a bank fraud and our bank account gets drained and I don't have any cash? Like, what do? I have to think about all of those, you know, edge cases of things and put stopgaps in place to support these people that are giving us their time to facilitate this mission. And like that just has to be the most important thing. So I spend a lot of time stressing about that and making sure that I'm taking care of them and that they're getting what they need.
Well, how many employees do you have at this point?
Hard-hitting question again, Jeremy.
I'm just wondering.
It's under 10. If you count contractors, I think we're at like 10. So like
10? Okay.
7 or 8 full time, and then a couple contractors depending on when we need stuff. So, you know, here and there.
You're at a fun size.
It's a great size. Like I can still stay on top of everything that's going on, be in the loop. There aren't information silos yet, so that works great. There doesn't have to be an extra tier of like managing for all that kind of stuff. We all just kind of move in tandem.
You can know everyone's name and maybe even where they like to go to lunch.
There's
a small enough number.
We all go and like hang out at a party on a Friday and like that. I don't ever really want to lose that. I don't ever want to not know the name of someone that I work with. Like I heard this story, I forget who it was, but someone was like on the bus or like on the subway and someone came up to them and were like, yeah, I work for you. And they were like, oh, nice to meet you. That scared the heck out of me. I was like, I don't ever want that. I don't want to not know who works. You know what I mean? That just feels so weird. I don't know.
I've worked at companies with 100 employees, 2,000 employees, and 50,000 employees.
Whoa.
And the smaller they get... Now, I did this in the opposite order, though. I started with the big company and was working my way down to small. The smaller companies are so much nicer to work for.
They can be. Yeah.
Enjoy it while you're smaller.
Small, yeah.
You'll be fine at 100.
I think we'll be okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, if you know, maybe you're at the point where you can't know all your employees' names. The good thing about that is maybe you have a yacht or a private jet. So, you know, that's...
Okay, a yacht or I thought you said a private chat, like individually chat with them. I will never buy a yacht or a private jet.
Okay. Well, you can buy one for me if you want.
Well, there's not enough water in Pittsburgh, Jeremy.
There's 3 rivers. I mean, I could take the yacht out on the river.
There's a stadium at it, I think, right? 3 Rivers.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I would. I don't know. I've worked at where it was me and the owner, so 2 people. I've worked at a place with 15. I've worked at a place at 50, and a place with 500. But I've never worked at a company bigger than 500.
500 is big enough that it's...
Yeah, that was Formlabs.
Yeah.
They were 500 at the time. I think they're much bigger now. But
yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how the dynamic changes, how much infrastructure is there in place, and like red tape and processes as those things go up. And like we've had to do that. Like before it was just me and Lucian and a couple Excel sheets, and we're just grinding out long hours packing stuff into boxes. And now there's like one of the things we're most proud of is if you go to ohai.opulo.io, OHAI is OHAI, which stands for Open Hardware Assembly Instructions. All of our all of our assembly instructions that our techs use to build the machine are open. So anyone can go and see how we actually build the machine. It's all open and freely available. So, you know, that's infrastructure that like we had to write that down and like kind of codify how do we actually build this thing? How do we make it consistent? Our QC checks, all that kind of stuff. And that's a huge growing pain with getting bigger is like, yeah, you kind of have to put some structure in place. You have to sign up for a health insurance plan. You have to get business insurance. You have to do the grown-up big boy stuff.
Is it? Steven seems to be paused.
Uh-oh. Steven, stop moving.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
There
I
he
was moving
goes.
too much.
There you go. You're
okay.
You know what? I was
you might
going
have
to
just
say,
been standing still.
We should probably take a coffee break at some point. So maybe this is
good time
to do it. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I was even looking at the clock because this is about the time when we would have a coffee break usually.
Yeah. So we'll do that. Maybe we'll talk about some more open hardware stuff and talk to Steven when we get back.
Well, this is fantastic. Welcome to the coffee break, everyone. I don't need to tell you who we are because we're already here. But my friend Jeremy here, he usually does a good job of reading off the top 5 patrons from Patreon.
So yeah, we're doing our shout outs and I'm reading them off because I can indeed read. So first of all, we got Timothy O'Brien, our Shack Steel level patron. We appreciate that. Carl, we appreciate you as well. I hear you're getting thrown back in your seat by YouTubers these days. Michael Sizer, Raptor, creatively spelled, Stuart Morrow, Brian Moses, always appreciated. And of course, Positive Waves. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it all. Now, Pat, if somebody did want to become a patron of the show, where could they do so?
I do know where they could do that. They could go to patreon.com/createinvent, all one word.
Excellent.
Well, they don't have to put cash in my pocket here. I would be very excited if any of y'all would go to speakpipe.com/createinvent, and you can leave a voice message. But we can, if you would like to, play your voice on the radio and answer your question, or, I mean, it depends on what you say. You could tell us that we're dumb, and I'll play that.
I do the final edit, so we'll see what comes out in the wash. But that being said, Pat, it's not played on terrestrial radio at this point. It's actually played on our podcast, right?
It is. It's on correct? Our podcast. Our podcast is not broadcast through the air. Like, should I get one of those little tiny FM transmitters just so we could say that it's broadcast? I could just have it.
I think we
sending
should do
it
that.
out of my house, like a little tiny pirate radio station that only reaches my garage.
As far as we know, it's certainly possible that somewhere in the world somebody has pirated our podcast and has it up, broadcast somewhere. I think
we could
that's
be famous in Tuvalu or some little country.
I hope so. I don't know how many radio stations they have in Tuvalu, but they probably don't have a lot of choices. So, if you're listening to us there, then please call in. We would love that. Speakpipe.com/createinvent. But we were going to use those very soon, and we're looking forward to it.
Jeremy, I heard you're working on something new.
I've been working on a light-up pick. I call it Lightstrum because I could register the domain for that. So if you go to lightstrum.com, you can find these picks that basically when you strum a guitar, it lights up. Or if you hold it in your hand and press down on it, actually lights an LED. So I think it's pretty awesome. I've sold a couple so far, so hopefully I can sell some more. All that being said, this is going to be clipped up into 2 episodes, so, hopefully you enjoyed this one, and soon we'll have the next one out for you for your audible enjoyment.
Fantastic.
Speakpipe.com/createinvent.
I got some news for you.